Hi, this is Boss Moves, and I'm Jenny Mitri, CEO of Power 3 Solutions.
And I'm Summer Liska. I'm the marketing manager here at Power 3.
And today we're going to talk about issues in the workplace. And we scoured Am I the Asshole? Uh, because there's a lot of assholes at work. And we're going to kind of explore some of their topics and issues and talk about it from multiple standpoints. So without further ado, Summer, do you want to pull up the first one and tell us what it's about?
Of course. So the first one is entitled, Am I the asshole for reporting my boss after he forced me to attend a meeting despite knowing I was in labor? Just based off of that, yes, you are not the asshole. But I'll start reading. I, 28 female, have been working at my company for 5 years, and until recently, I love my job. I was 8 months pregnant when this happened, about a month ago. So I started having contractions while at work. Since I was not due yet, I thought it was just Braxton Hicks because they weren't that intense. Just a week before that, I had experienced Braxton Hicks and went to the hospital, but it was a false alarm. This time, I was still working when the contractions started in the morning, and I again thought it was Braxton Hicks. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I tried to keep working. Last time I went to the hospital, my boss, John, 45 male, made sarcastic comments about me being overly dramatic and joked how I should schedule my labor around important meetings. I have social anxiety and tend to take people's crap about pushing back, so I just took it. By noon, the contractions were getting stronger and closer together, and I knew it was real labor. I needed to go to the hospital. I informed John that I was in labor and needed to leave. He rolled his eyes and said, Just stay for the meeting at 1 p.m. It's crucial and we need you there.
All right, I'm going to stop you for a second because, first of all, fuck John. That's fucked up. Period. There's no way around that. Keep going.
No, yeah, fuck this guy. The meeting lasted an excruciating 2 hours. By the end of it, I was in so much pain that I could barely walk. This poor girl. I
Yeah.
finally left and drove myself to the hospital where I was admitted immediately. My husband reached 30 My husband reached 30 to 40 minutes later because he was on the other side of town for a meeting. My daughter was born later that evening, thankfully healthy despite the delay. When I told my husband what had happened, he was furious and insisted we reported John to HR. I was hesitant because I didn't want to jeopardize my job, but I agreed it was the right thing to do. HR was appalled and assured me they would handle the issue. John has since been suspended pending an investigation.
So hang on one second there, too. We're going to
Mhm.
talk about HR's position and the manager's position when we get through this. All right, so go ahead.
Okay. The real kicker, during the investigation, it came out that John had emailed the entire office while I was in labor, complaining about my lack of communication and making fun of me for overreacting. He even implied that I was using my pregnancy as an excuse to get out of work. What fucking bullshit. Oh my God.
Like,
Now my coworkers are pissed at me, saying I overreacted and that I should have just sucked it up for the sake of the company. I even received messages and emails from a few colleagues saying that I've ruined John's career and that he was just doing his job under pressure. If his job is being an asshole, sure. One even said that I should have toughed it out like their wife did during her pregnancy. Oh, fuck no. The stress from this whole ordeal has made it difficult to enjoy my first few days with my newborn. I'm constantly second guessing myself and feeling guilty despite knowing I did what was best for my baby and me. To make matters worse, the interim manager who took over from John is even worse. He's made it clear to everyone that he resents my actions and has made my return to work unbearable. Now that my maternity leave is over, I find myself isolated at work. People give me side eyes and whisper about me. During lunch, I'm alone because no one wants to sit with the troublemaker. It feels like high school all over again. I dread going into work each day and facing the hostility and judgment. I never imagined that doing what was right for my health and my baby's well being would turn my colleagues against me like this. It's gut wrenching to feel so isolated and vilified for simply standing up for myself and my rights. I cry most of the time when I come home, and sometimes even in the office washroom when someone passes a comment. In the worst moments, I get mad at my husband and blame him for making me tell HR, even though I know he did the right thing. He's so sweet and never takes it to heart. I apologize soon after, but he always says he wasn't even mad and that he understands how I'm feeling, especially since I'm just 1 month postpartum. He says I should take action and complain, but I don't want to make things worse. He's also saying he can't see me like this and I should just quit because it's hurting him. I don't know what to do. I'm such a sensitive and emotional person in general, and now it's been worse since giving birth. Am I the asshole for reporting my boss after he forced me to attend a meeting despite knowing I was in labor? And that's the end of that one.
It's actually kind of sad. And
Mhm.
I think got a lot of feelings about this. I think that the company culture from top down is a problem. You know, from the HR perspective, they've got a problem on their hands. But a lot
Mhm.
of companies will support people like John because they perceive John as a powerhouse, moneymaker. You know, clearly they got rid of John and the next person came in who was even worse. But I feel like what's sad is that she's going through any of this in today's society. And laws
Mhm.
have only just caught up to this, but obviously, for anyone who doesn't understand this, pregnancy is a medical condition.
Yes,
I honestly
100%.
think being a woman is a medical condition. I mean,
Yes.
outside of pregnancy, there's a
The
lot.
shit that we have to go through as women compared to men, it's incomparable. Like, there's no comparing it.
Right. And I think men would be crying in a corner if they had to go through some of the stuff we go through,
Mhm.
just being a woman. So there's a lack of understanding. You don't have to understand. The law doesn't say if you don't understand, you can be a dick. Doesn't
Mhm.
say that. But a lot of people in her shoes are busy feeling bad and sad and not like enforcing the law. You know, she has
Mhm.
a lawsuit on her hands, and
Mhm.
she could uh, and should pursue it because if the HR role, like they took it seriously, they made a change, but they didn't continue to ensure that they worked on that cultural problem.
Exactly, especially hiring someone that was even worse than the original boss. They clearly in the interview process didn't care to ask him critical questions about this woman and her case, especially her only being a month postpartum and already returning to work. Like that in itself is horrible. But the fact that she's getting treated this way, again, only a month postpartum, having gone through that myself, your emotions are crazy. Your hormones are insane. Like you're already like all over the place. You're sleep deprived, you're hungry, you're taking care of a kid before you take care of yourself, obviously. And then for especially all of her coworkers to kind of gang up on her, that just is horrible company culture. I could not imagine staying at a place like that.
Right. I mean, I will say this: her husband actually sounds kind of awesome, in
Yes.
that he encouraged her to report it, and he's encouraging her to quit. You know, there's
Mhm.
a lot of husbands be like, "We need your income. You just got to do what you got to do. Suck it up, Buttercup." You know.
Exactly.
I definitely think that she's lucky to have a supportive husband who doesn't want her to have to deal with that.
Yes, and honestly, one of the comments that threw me off in that was her male coworker that said that she should have just toughed it out like his wife did. Oh, so many things to say about that, but every pregnancy is different. The same woman can have 4 pregnancies and every single one of them can be different. Just
Yeah.
because your wife had one easy experience in
Or
pregnancy and delivery, like
or his wife suffered because she didn't want to be a nuisance to this jackass. And
exactly.
one day she's going to realize he's a jerk and she's going to leave him and he's going to be
Mhm.
wondering why. And that's,
Exactly. Exactly.
but I think that there's the idea of a job, in the workplace and the people you're working with. You don't always get to choose who you work with, especially if you're not the boss and you are coming into a work culture. And if she came in and she was young and healthy and not going through any of this stuff, and then she may not have picked up on the fact that she's working with people who are intolerant. And
Right.
she's got proof. She's got communications, emailing the whole company, all those things. So she's got proof for a lawsuit. But when you are looking for a job, sometimes you just need a job, you need income, and you
Mhm.
don't know what the company culture is like. And you may not even be at a place in your life where you'd be asking the question, well, what would happen? How would you treat me if I
Mhm.
were sick or pregnant or these things? And actually, pregnancy has been covered in some ways for a while, not very long. a few decades at most. But, well, it has and it hasn't. Like there's FMLA that's existed, but
Mhm,
pregnancy as a disability is actually a relatively new thing. Can't remember
mhm,
what year it came about, but it's quite new to look at it as a disability. Even though short-term disability has been covering it as long as I've been an adult, it
mhm,
hasn't been recognized legally as a disability.
mhm.
So that has changed, and I don't know when this was posted. Um, but coming down to you know each employee, you're vulnerable, you need the income. Maybe it's a career that you've fought for, you've gone to college for, you've built up, you're in a great company opportunity. The position itself is great, but you're working for assholes. And I think, there's nothing more destructive than a toxic work environment.
100%. I was actually talking to my younger sister about this the other day, because she works from home and she doesn't have a lot of coworkers. So I was telling her, when you have good coworkers, it makes your job so much easier. You could really not like the work you're doing, but if you have good coworkers, you're like, fuck it, I'll show up to work and have fun with my coworkers and I'll get my shit done. But if you show up to work and you like your job, but you don't like your coworkers, it destroys your job. You start to not like your job because you don't want to be there anymore. I don't think some companies understand how important culture is when it comes to a workplace. It doesn't matter if you have a great workplace, but horrible workplace culture. People aren't going to want to be there no matter how incredible your company is. You could have a shit company with like 5 employees that you all love, and you could love your job. You know what I mean? Like, not that a small company is a shit company, but a job you don't like per se. Companies that have good culture have long-term employees, and I think that shows long-term growth. When you're constantly having the rotating door of employees in and out, you're losing money, you're losing experience, and you're just bringing in people to train them and for them to leave. Like, that's a waste of everybody's time.
Well, and people with good values are going to want to leave there. And those
Exactly.
good values extend to all kinds of walks of life. I mentioned in there that we kind of want to talk about the manager versus HR. HR catches a lot of slack for what managers do, and managers don't have the classic HR training about the law and about things like, you're not supposed to ask certain questions in interviews, and you're not supposed to, I don't care if someone is 9 months pregnant, if they haven't announced their pregnancy, you're not supposed to talk about them being pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
That's their right to, not obviously if they're taking leave, they're going to be giving notice, but if they give notice to HR and the manager knows, and then someone else is walking around, or even the manager is walking around telling everyone else, they're not supposed to do that.
Right.
So emailing everyone about your pregnancy condition and the fact that you couldn't, join in a meeting, and some of those people might not even be against her. They might be afraid to be around her because they're afraid that they're going to start being looked at some kind of way too, and have their job be
Exactly.
in jeopardy. Because I think any woman who's had children would have some sympathy for that, um,
Mhm.
unless it's some really weird, mean guy's wife who potentially agrees with him on this stuff. I just think that it's sad that women feel like they need to accept this stuff. And
Exactly.
it's sad that companies wouldn't go hard to figure out how to adjust that culture and to train everybody, not just the manager, not the man, not just the manager who left, he's gone, great, but changing the mindset of the incoming manager and the employees around them and say, you know what, this warrants some training. Let's get people in. Let's talk about the law and their protections and their rights and why we're
Mhm.
here to do this. And sometimes HR is powerless to do that. Sometimes, you've got like a CEO and you've got like their management team, and HR is over here as the little ugly duckling. And they're there to protect your company and your employees. You protect the employees, you're protecting the company. You protect the company, you're protecting your employees. You follow the law, you're in a much better place. HR doesn't always get listened to by the managers because their goal is meet the bottom line, meet the objectives, what are the sales,
Mhm.
and sometimes that takes like that sort of more ruthless mindset. But
Right.
ruthless doesn't have to be impersonal. And it's actually, you could wind up with a big lawsuit on your hands that could set you back and make you look bad in the world, you
Right.
know. So there is something about success being related to how you treat people, whether it's against the law or not. So,
1000%.
have you, um, if so, what would, if you were to be in a room with this woman, what would you say to her?
My heart breaks for her that no one is sticking up to the bullshit. Like, as a woman that's been pregnant and worked and had maternity leave and all of that stuff, I was shown nothing but support, especially when I came back. People were like, if you need more, like, we understand that you're not going to be as responsive. Like, you haven't, like, my newborn was with me at home. We were like, we understand. We just got to get this baseline stuff done, but we're here to support you in any way possible. And that meant so much to me, just knowing that I had people that had my back and that were on my side. I I would hope that I would have the balls to tell her, like, I've got your back. I'm going to support you. I'll sit with you at lunch. I'll come to your desk and talk to you. Like, fuck all these assholes that don't understand what you're going through. Um, Men, of course, because they're not going to try to put themselves in a woman's shoes because they died. But I think personally, I wouldn't stand for that bullshit. Like, you're not going to treat another woman
Well,
like that. Like,
and as someone who's, more recently had kids of your own, you could be in that same situation. And
exactly, like, that could be me my next pregnancy, and, like, I'm not going through that bullshit.
well, and there's some argument for, yes, she's the victim of this instance, but by setting that culture, sending those emails out, going around talking about it, it could create a hostile work environment for any woman who is even considering having children. And
Exactly.
got a more, like, a sort of much bigger problem on their hands. And, you know, if so let me back up a second, because her best and first legal move is to file a report with the EEO,
Mhm.
Equal Employment Opportunity Office, Commission, I should say. And each state has sort of an office, and you can go and file a complaint. Whether or not they're going to do that, and like, because they can pursue and they can cause fees and fines. If you're a contractor to the government, that can be a ding on your government contracting um,
Right.
abilities. There's a lot of things that can come down against that. But also, if you go to a private attorney, they might be willing to take your case. And
Mhm.
depending on what the lawsuit is for, um, or like how much they think it's worth, and attorneys are always going to count the numbers. I mean, I just hate to say it, but a lot of them they'll do it for free based on winning.
Right.
That's the downside of that, is sometimes you have attorneys who are like, I'm not going to take this case because it's a risk. We may never see that money. But sometimes you can kind of leverage the threat of the lawsuit for a settlement. And then,
Right.
but the most important thing that you're trying to get is accountability. There was actually a lawsuit for sexual harassment against McDonald's. I forgot how many years ago, not that long ago, within the last decade. And it was sexual harassment, but it was pervasive. And the company did not do enough to train and mitigate the evasive sexual harassment. They didn't terminate people. They, maybe did slap on the wrist here or there, but they didn't really address it. And it was systemic. And they had, I mean, it was millions and millions and millions of dollars in the suit. And it was the EEO ran it. And, McDonald's is still going, but that accountability is out there.
Mhm.
And now that they've had to do the uncomfortable thing, which is give up a big chunk of money, maybe they'll think twice and do a little more. So you're not just trying to get rich off of it, you're setting a precedent. But do you want to be that person who leads that charge? And I think this girl is sort of like, I don't want to be in that position. She doesn't even want to stay. She went and sat and suffered through the meeting for 2 hours.
Mhm.
It's insane to me.
I couldn't imagine.
Right. And, I get it in a way. I don't know what I would do when I was in my 20s, you know?
Right. Especially as a young mom, you're trying to prove yourself. You're trying to prove yourself, especially when you have a lot of male coworkers and upper management. You're trying to prove yourself to them. Like, I'm tough. I can do this. Like, I don't need any extra, like, care or whatever. But I do see that side where she was trying to tough through it to prove that she could do it, but she should have never been put in that position in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, I
If I
just
had my way, I would train women to be a bit more cutthroat because it shows up in so many ways, and this is just one example.
Mhm.
But we have to protect ourselves, and
Yes.
us being nice or worried about ruffling feathers has kind of, you know, put us in a backseat position at times. And this is just one of
Mhm.
those cases.
Exactly, like, I feel like as women, from we're taught from such a young age to sit down, shut up, and just tough it out. And that is such fucking bullshit. Like, we're allowed to raise our voices. We're allowed to call people out, like men and women. It doesn't matter. Like, we don't have to keep taking this disrespect and be these like people pleasers. I feel
Right.
like so many women are forced into being the people pleasers and we're like the martyrs. And it's like we don't need to keep taking that position anymore. Like, we don't need to be people pleasers. We can be boss bitches. Like, we don't need to keep taking this shit.
I think we need to change the way the workforce is in general. I mean, for example, this 40-hour work week concept doesn't work for a lot of women who are mothers, and it stunts their careers when they have to choose, or they, can't really function in both places. And
Exactly.
we're just the default parent for a lot. I mean, that just happens a lot, and you can split those roles as much as you can, but
Mhm.
it's still difficult. And I think that in general, requiring every full-time job to be 40 hours on site, if it doesn't have to be on site, is restrictive to women's needs. And if I had my way and I could sort of change the world, I would start there. I would
Mhm.
also start with much longer maternity leave. There is some changes. For instance, Maryland passed a law to start paying out for some amount of maternity leave, and
Mhm.
companies are paying to an insurance, and every year they keep delaying it. I'm like, what's so hard about this? Let's just do it.
That should be so simple.
I just think that nobody wants to actually put it in action, and the tax is not that much. Like, I'm like, let me pay. I
I
actually called our
will pay. I will pay that.
right, and um, uh, I've called our benefits broker saying, well, are there private companies that are offering that? I mean, beyond short-term disability. Are
Right.
private companies offering some kind of maternity leave insurance? And she said, well, they're going to, because in the state of Maryland, you can either sign up for the Maryland offering or you can sign up for a private offering. But they're
Mhm.
not going to until Maryland does it. I'm like, if that were me, I would just start that now.
Exactly, like,
I would just be like, companies that want to do it voluntarily, it's a small percentage of everybody's pay, but at the end of the day, it feeds the heartbeat of society.
exactly, exactly, and, like, as a young mom that, like, eventually plans on having more kids, I'd so much rather I would pick a company that has those benefits over one that doesn't. You're
Mhm.
attracting more potential employees to your company by having benefits like that. And it's
Yeah,
just ridiculous that, like, we're waiting for that to be the standard to do it. Well, make your own fucking standard. Like, make that what you want to do for your company. Like, set yourself apart. Like, why are we waiting for everyone else to kinda jump on the bandwagon? Like, just do it. Get started.
yeah, yeah. One of my old companies, I kind of pitched the idea of parental leave for men and women, and
Mhm,
some amount of paid parental leave. And I was really grateful that the owner of the company at the time, was like, yeah. And it's kind of like for smaller businesses, it's lower risk from the perspective of, you don't have a ton of people having babies all at once all the time.
right,
There's only so much cost to it, but the relief
right,
of it. So when I started Power 3, we offer, I think it's 2 weeks paid leave on top of the short-term disability. And,
right.
for that same reason that, this is time to rest, recover, bond, and if I had it my way and I could afford to, it'd be a lot longer. Other
Mhm,
countries will do like years. And free daycare. So it's like,
literally. Like, there are people out there that are working 2 mom and dad are working, and dad's whole paycheck goes to daycare, and they're only taking in mom's income. Like, that's crazy. Like, Why don't more companies offer daycares? Like, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's there's and the you it's funny you mentioned that because the dependent care offering isn't often promoted enough, and a lot of companies don't have it, especially
Mhm.
smaller companies. But dependent care uh, is part of your like a flexible spending account, and they have
Mhm.
one that's for medical expenses and one that's for dependent care, and it can go towards certain dependents. It can even go towards adult dependents, and and you can contribute to it throughout the year, but you have to use it within that calendar year. So you kind of have to know a little bit what your expenses are going to be. But the tax break on that is significant if you're using it, and they just finally increased it from 2,500 a year to 5,000 a year. Now,
Mhm.
Summer, you have somebody or two somebody's in daycare.
Mhm.
What was 2,500 ever going to cover that? Not,
2,500 is like a couple months worth of daycare. Like that is
yeah.
not enough at all.
So the 5,000 still isn't enough, but it's
No.
a lot better, and it is an option that people have to harbor their money that they're paying towards those things. Um,
Right.
so, you know, it's something that I think as we are starting to accept these things more as a society, we're creating more benefits and opportunities around it. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, the human experience can still be totally whatever that company wants it to be or what that individual wants it to be. You know, you
Exactly.
could be reporting to a boss that's a total asshole, and in the same company, you could be reporting to someone else entirely who's just like lovely, wonderful, accepting, supportive, who will drive. I mean, I can't imagine being like, oh my gosh, you're in labor? Let me drive you to the hospital. You know,
Literally,
like I
that would
can't imagine
never
not being that person.
you like this would never happen at Power 3 ever. I feel like we're such a family culture. Like our like we're all moms. Our kids come first and we know that. At other companies, it's just not like that. It's simply not like that. And it's all based on culture and who's leading the drive for your culture. And clearly this boss is leading their culture into the fucking shitter. Like this is horrible. Like what is going on?
There's an entrepreneur guy who does a lot of speaking, and he's does a lot on social media. I can't remember his name right now, sorry, but I know he started off with like selling wine. Somebody's going to know his name, but he talks a lot about toxic people in the workplace, and he's like, you know, sometimes your best performers are your most toxic people. They
Mhm.
could be in a very high level position in the company, responsible for people, and that only gives them more reach to damage your workforce. And he's
Exactly.
like, he's like, I don't want to hire assholes. So in
Mhm.
the am I the asshole thing, that boss definitely is the asshole, and I can't believe that they just let another asshole come in and do the same thing, and
Right.
didn't do anything more to adjust the culture around it and the expectations around it. And whoever that guy
Exactly.
reports to should have been like, no, we're not doing that. Um,
Mhm.
but
Exactly. And this even ties into like more than just work. It ties into life. It ties into like athletics. Like I played Division 2 field hockey, and my coach always said I recruited based on skills second and personality first. If I didn't like you as a person, I knew my players weren't going to like you as a person and you were not going to be on my team. And I will say she did a very good job at that, and we had a very good team culture because of that. But she straight up said, if you're an asshole, bye. I don't care if you're the number one recruit in our whole like in everything. Like you could be the number one recruit in the country. I don't care. If I don't like you as a person, you're gonna destroy my team. And I think people don't understand it does not matter how good an employee is at their job. If they destroy your culture, they're gonna destroy your business from the inside out.
yeah. Well, and I think, as a company, there's a risk letting anyone go. I think they had enough information on this guy to let him go. But, you know, they shouldn't have just stopped there because the problem, you know, the whole idea of like a HR investigation, I don't know what the investigation entailed. I mean, I think it's like, oh, you did this. We have proof you did it. So you're fired. To me, that's like it's like a two-step investigation. And some companies, well, let's reform them. Let's do a training. Let's make it better. But the truth is that, sometimes you got to make tough decisions. I'm glad that they did in that moment. I've seen other decisions not go that way. Lots of
Mhm.
stories about that, but it never ends well, by the way.
Right.
But, looking above that person, what is the culture that would make them so comfortable? Not only being that way to the girl, but to um, all the other employees to bring them
Right.
into this.
And the fact that all those employees are manipulating her and making her think that it's her fault and like they're basically like blaming the victim of the situation, like that's crazy. Like that's literally crazy.
Yeah, it's really sad. And so I don't know this person's name or anything, but she is definitely not the asshole. And I wish she would be a bigger asshole and hold that company accountable.
Blow that shit up. Like fuck that company.
Exactly. So I say let's go on to the next one.
Yes,
There
I
might be some
agree.
other topics that have similar backgrounds, so I can't remember, but we'll go on to the next one.
Okay. So moving on to the second topic, am I the asshole? I was yelled at today by a male coworker and I clapped back. Good for you. I was yelled at today by a male coworker and clapped back. Still unsure if I did the right thing. I'm part of a team of 6 developers and the only woman on the team. We have several teams and I get along well with everyone. I'm usually thought of as nice to everyone and joking around, etc. I've held several I've heard several coworkers tell me that they enjoy working with me.
So 1 second there. The
Mhm.
word nice is a trigger for me, by the way. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's funny that she put that in there to show that she has value on that team because
Right.
men never make nice their value. Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. I
Mhm.
completely agree with you. Today I got into an altercation with one of my male coworkers. He is stubborn and is known to have outbursts at people, especially if we don't do exactly as he wants us to. He seems to struggle with nuances and gets mad at you if you don't solve something code related in the way that pleases him. He's been working at this company for over 10 years, whereas I've been here for a year. So there's that. I've never been micromanaged by someone as much as him, and he is not even my manager or boss. In short, the altercation was this. I was handed a document with descriptions of how certain software components in our code base is intended to work. Some of the descriptions are newly revised, so I have to rewrite code to fit the new description. The descriptions were unclear, so I decided to email the engineer who had written the document. He is very well versed into the system design of these components. We call him M. As I was typing my email, my male coworker exploded and was yelling, I know these things. You should ask me. Stop bothering M. I'm usually cold in these situations and I don't really care about his outbursts, but this one really caught me due to his usage of the word bothering. I was typing a 2 sentence email and he made it sound like I was sending M 100 of emails. I looked back and responded, I'm sorry, are you my boss or something? I'm emailing him because I want his explanation since he has written this document. And he responded by saying, You're so rude. That's so rude of you. And I was like, Yeah, then go cry about it. When I said the last
That's good.
word, I know, right? When I said the last words, the entire landscape went quiet. Usually no one stands up to this coworker and he is having angry outbursts without anyone stepping in, and this is the first time I stood up for myself. Did I do something wrong in this situation? Like, is it normal to have these outbursts at coworkers? I'm second guessing myself at this time, but I really feel like he is the unreasonable one. And that's the end of that one. There's a lot of different layers to this one for sure. I love that she stuck up for herself and wasn't gonna take his shit anymore. I do think that she could have said it a little better than that despite him yelling at her. I always say when they go low, you go higher. I think she could have responded better in this situation, but do I love that she stood up for herself? Absolutely, yes. But I just don't want her to be the one getting in trouble with HR for saying the things that she said, even though she was not the one in the wrong.
Yeah, I mean, those things can backfire, especially if someone has a track record of working there 10 years and they're more senior in their role, even if they're not a manager. Uh,
Right.
I have sort of a similar story that, I won't use any context, but basically, an employee who was a black female was trying to help customers and needed help because there's a lot of customers. And she turned and asked one of the more senior employees that actually doesn't work for the same company. They work in the same facility, but there's different, people in there,
Mhm.
that work for different companies, which is typical for government contractors.
Right.
And actually makes it really hard on the HR realm, by the way. So that's a whole other can of worms. But so he doesn't help her and is pissed that she asked for help because this higher level guy who should never have to, you know. Never mind the fact that that department's whole role is to help customers. He perceived himself as above this, and she needed help. And after the customers were gone and she was up and taking a break, he literally physically charged at her, screaming and yelling, and was running at her. And another employee jumped in front and stopped him. Thank goodness. I don't know what he would have done when he got to her. Um, but she came to us and said, this happened. She reported it at the time, and we, as the as not the company that employs that particular person, had little control over how it was handled. But
Right.
we provided all the information and they set about on their investigation. And after investigating it, not really investigating it, they basically demoted her, moved her to a different office location, and let him continue on as is untouched. And
Disgusting.
it was infuriating. And I was like, there's nothing you did there. And she sort of defended herself when he was yelling at her. So she did clap back too. I don't know exact verbatim what she said, but
Mhm.
she didn't just sort of wilt. And, I don't know what I would do if a man was charging at me in the workplace. But I definitely would defend myself in some way.
Mhm.
But I'd also want to get the hell out of there.
Right.
So she wound up working in a different facility in the basement, doing a job that's way less advanced, and it really affected her. And, it's hard because I would have loved for her to pursue a lawsuit over something like that. Uh,
Mhm.
and she did not. She kind of handled it way more gracefully than I ever would have, to
Mhm.
be honest. But especially where I am now, I don't know how I would have handled it when I was younger. I'm a lot meaner now. Uh,
Mhm.
but so, but with this woman, kind of the go cry in a corner. First of all, I kind of love it. It was completely emasculating, obviously, um,
Mhm.
but it was sort of, you know, I don't know how the rest of the team felt about this guy and his behavior, but she's describing that he's treating everyone like that.
Yeah, she said in her post that, like, everyone felt that he was, like, overbearing and tried to act like the manager even though he wasn't. So they all might have been like, "Pat on the back, girl, like, you finally stood up to him." And I do love that she stood up for herself. I feel like not enough people stick up for themselves. They can just be like, "Yeah, whatever, I'll take it." And sometimes you just reach your limit and you blow.
Well, and I think in a way she kind of was like, I'm not the one. And I
Mhm.
wonder if he'll try her again because,
Right.
she didn't spaz out and like freak out and cry and do all these things. She just was like, go cry in a corner.
Right?
I'm
She didn't call him names, nothing like that. She just was like, "What you gonna do about it?" Like
right. And I think that, it doesn't sound like there wasn't anything in there about her getting in trouble, right?
No, it just asked, like, "Did I do something wrong? Am I the asshole?" But it didn't say anything about, like, HR getting involved or anything like
Yeah.
that.
So I'd be like, okay, there's no problem here. Maybe she put him in her place. Maybe next time he comes at her harder.
Mhm.
But at some point, if it happens again, I would stand up, walk out, and start documenting. And, in her shoes, because even though she's clapping back, he's creating, a bad work environment.
Right,
And
he's baiting her into clapping back. She wouldn't have to stand up for herself if he didn't try to bring her down and yell at her.
right. And, she could, if I don't think it's worth the effort, but in theory, she could go talk to the guy after the fact and say, I'm feeling a little bad about the way I talked to you, but here's the boundaries that I have. And I think if we can respect each other's boundaries, we can work well together. But I don't want to be yelled at. And, this isn't how I want to work. Uh,
Right.
and, the sad part is this company, she could be a really great, very conscientious employee. and she may eventually leave because of someone like that. Um,
Exactly.
whether or not she should get a manager involved. What are your thoughts on that?
I think first she has to have a one-on-one communicate, like talk with this employee or coworker and just be like, listen, I understand that I shouldn't have said what I said, but you brought me to that level. I don't want this to happen again. Kind of like what you said, like, are we good? I just need you to stop doing ABC. I will stop doing this and then we'll be good. Based on how that conversation goes is where I would take the next step. It could go one of two ways. He could be like, okay, I understand, which I don't think he would do. And you could kind of just see how it goes. If he then freaks out again, you could eventually bring in management, I believe, and just be like, he's making me uncomfortable. Especially if your other coworkers feel the same way, bring them into it too, because like that person's only destroying the workplace, you know?
And that's an interesting thing because a lot of times people will experience it too, witness it too, and want nothing to do with the
Right.
the problem itself, and you may or may not get their buy-in. What's interesting to me about it is her story stopped with her telling him to go cry in a corner.
Mm-hmm.
Which tells me she hit a button that made him back off because some people would have escalated further at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly knew he was in over his head, and she may have asserted a boundary that he may not be willing to risk again because of fear of being made to look like a joke again, because he definitely was made to look like a joke.
Right. Sorry.
um, you good?
Yeah, my cat's meowing.
So funny. Yeah, my cats are the door is shut, but I wouldn't be surprised if they figure out I'm down here.
Yeah,
But
she knows how to push the doors open now, so game over for me. I'm
funny.
sorry.
Um, yeah, I mean, with this one, it could be pretty straightforward and just blow over, but it could escalate. It could get worse in the future. Uh,
Mhm,
one thing that I've seen happen is when there's sort of this thing happening, I was the person who was going to handle it directly and try
mhm,
to like resolve it with the coworker. And I didn't go to the boss, and I wasn't going to be a tattletale about their behavior towards me. Even though they had behaved badly towards me in front of the boss, I
mhm.
probably in some ways had some warnings that maybe I wouldn't be supported enough.
Right.
But, and I've learned a lot about that because that person wound up being in the ear of the boss, and it wound up changing their perspective on me. And I started to feel like, I can't win here.
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of an interesting thing too, because perception is reality. And
Mhm.
you may not think that this guy is overgoing, let's say they're a team, they all report to one person. This guy could be having golf outings with his manager while
Right.
you're here putting your head down, doing your job, and you're 1 year in, he's been there 10 years. You don't
Mhm.
know what his relationships are. You don't know what he's telling other people. It could
Right.
backfire on you.
Right.
Um, and it may not be like an instant they come and talk to you, you shouldn't have said that, but it's a perception value. You may be passed over for a promotion or a raise because you're perceived as not nice, you know?
Right.
And that's why, when she said that I'm considered nice, so she's basically saying like, I'm not walking around being an asshole.
Mhm.
I don't have problems with people, but this guy is a problem.
Exactly.
And,
And
I've
it's
done.
sad because a man wouldn't say that. And before we hop on to the next topic, I wanted to bring this up too. I kind of take back what I said in the beginning, I think, because I just thought about this from this perspective. If it was a man saying that to another man, no issue. It would be fine. It would just be like two bros, butted heads, we're good. But because it's a woman saying it, it's a problem. And that's fucked up. So I kind of take back what I said. I think that if she was a man, nothing would have come of it. He would have been like, all right, I'll chill. Like, we're good. But because she's a woman, she's seen as a bitch and she's not being nice.
Right. And the bigger thing is, as a woman, she's worried that she's not being nice
Exactly. Men never have to worry if they're being nice, like ever.
ever.
Men never have to worry if they're easy to work
They
with
wouldn't even
or if they're
describe their values as nice.
no.
So go back to the beginning when she says, I'm nice and people sort of enjoy working with me. Guys would be like, I'm a badass who gets shit done. And, and that would be their values.
Right.
Like, it wouldn't be the same. And I think that women's values play into how they participate in the company, but also it's based on the expectations around them. Because I've
Right.
had people say, well, if you're not nice enough, you're not going to keep this job. I've actually had people say that, one person in particular. And not being nice enough, I'm actually one of the nicest people. And I'm like, I'm
Right.
your biggest cheerleader. Not, what do you mean not being nice enough? Because I ruffled some dickhead's feathers. That's not being nice. I was being professional. I wasn't petting their little head. I wasn't being like, oh, okay, guy, let me make you feel good about yourself. I'm saying, here's the law. I need this documentation from you. And that was me being not nice. And women are put in that position all the time.
Mhm.
And, and actually, every guy that I've ever been just professional with and not soft with has gone running to my boss.
Oh, I'm
That's
sure.
actually a true thing.
No, I
So,
can totally see that.
oh, she's in HR. Isn't she supposed to be nice? Like, no, I actually have a job to get done too.
Mhm.
And, so there's things like that that I feel like if I could catch women right at the beginning of their career, I would say things like, don't smile when someone tells you to smile at work, unless it's for a picture. But like, I've had people say, why aren't you smiling? Well, I'm focused. I'm solving the world's problems at my desk right now. Like, I don't need to smile at you when I'm sitting here thinking about a problem. Or
Exactly.
like, oh, you're more than just a pretty face. That just diminished the whole solution I just presented to you. you know and women, like, I didn't say anything. I was like, oh, like, what do I say about that? And I feel like this woman here is sort of feeling like, I guarantee if any man had said that to somebody, they wouldn't be sitting there the next day worrying about if they were the asshole.
Mhm.
It
Like,
would
I'm
just
not
be,
implying that because I'm pretty, I can't be smart.
yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's
So,
so frustrating.
HR contacts, there's not a lot that could be done here other than a little bit of management and a little bit of maybe potentially training. A lot of times HR gets blamed when there's big problems in a company, but they're limited on what they can do,
Right.
or the culture of, I don't feel comfortable going to them, and maybe they don't do anything. But when somebody becomes a manager in the workforce, it's 99% of the time because they've been there long enough,
Mhm.
and maybe because they have the hard skills to do it.
Right.
However, sometimes the best managers aren't always the best at the actual work, or haven't been there the longest, or, and I think that, companies make that mistake all the time, and they put someone in a position of authority. And he wasn't technically her boss, but just by his seniority, he obviously felt like he had some sort of power. And maybe
Right.
there was some sort of expectation that the more senior people guide the junior people. Uh,
Right.
but that doesn't need to cross the line of being a jerk, and I think that, you could potentially train someone like that on how to speak more professionally to people. And maybe he would adhere to it if he thought he was going to be in trouble. But you
Mhm.
can't change character with training. You can only set a precedent that you're not going to tolerate XYZ behavior.
Exactly, exactly.
You want to go to the next topic?
Yeah, let's go to the next one. All right, next one. Am I the asshole for reporting a coworker for harassment after he gave me an annoying nickname? This happened a few years ago, but was brought up in conversation today, so I thought I'd share for nostalgia. I work in a typical office setting where everyone got a standard issue keyboard. I didn't like the one provided. The way I hold my hands when I'm typing the keyboard makes my wrist hurt. So I brought my own keyboard, which admittedly made a bit more noise than the standard one. It wasn't like I was smashing keys though, it was just clicky. One of my coworkers, Bob, sat nearby. He started calling me Hammer Hands. Every time he heard me
Fucking Bob.
post
Sorry. Go
fucking
ahead.
Bob. At first I thought it was just a dumb nickname, but then he kept using it. Eventually he started calling me that in work emails and chat messages. Stuff like Hammer Hands usually takes care of that, or Hammer Hands, you're typing too loud. I asked him to stop because it's childish. He didn't. Instead, he decided to file file a complaint with HR saying my keyboard was disruptive and that I should be required to use the standard office keyboard. HR called me in and told me there was no policy about keyboards, and as long as it wasn't causing serious disruption, it was up to me. They said my keyboard was noticeable but not disruptive, and they said they'd talk to Bob about it as well. I thought that would be the end of it. But of course, Bob didn't drop it. He kept using hammer hands in emails, going so far as to calling me hammer hands in emails outside the company. So I went to HR and filed a complaint about him for harassment. I showed them the messages and how he kept using the nickname even after I asked him to stop. HR met with the both of us and basically said that Bob was being juvenile and needed to knock it off. Bob said the outside company email was an accident until I showed them that it was more than once. He still insisted that my keyboard was the problem and that HR should back him up. But HR again said that it was my choice what keyboard to use, as long as it wasn't a violation of policy. There was no policy. Bob ended up saying I was petty for escalating this. He claimed I was weaponizing HR over a harmless nickname, his exact words. So, am I the asshole for going to HR about this? Someone said I was because I could have easily changed keyboards, but then again, Bob could have easily just not called me hammer hands.
So this is sort of an interesting one for me because as a mother of someone who is autistic and has sound sensitivities, Bob may be undiagnosed autistic, or he
Mhm.
might be, have some sort of misophonia that makes it so it's like I have long nails and my sister can't stand if I tap my phone when I'm typing
Mhm.
with my nails. So I
Right,
try to use the pads of my fingers.
right,
So, I can empathize with some of this bothering Bob. If I'm
right.
the HR person in that scenario, why am I not moving Bob?
I was just gonna say that. Like, why don't we move one of them to opposite sides of the office? The keyboard can't be that fucking loud where you can hear it across an office space. Like,
Right.
why are they sitting next to each other when this is an issue?
Like it,
Especially if he's the only one complaining, then that makes me think that no one else has an issue with it.
right. And and that's the functional issue here. But and they could have said, okay, this style of keyboard is better. Maybe we can find a keyboard that's a little quieter.
Mhm.
Ergonomics in the office place are a real thing.
Yeah,
And your wrist getting sore is a real thing when you type a lot because people have surgeries for carpal tunnel. It's a
yeah,
medical condition, so her soreness might be her body's warning that something's wrong. So I think
right.
she's legitimate in her complaint. He can be legitimate that this is really disrupting his focus and whatever, especially if he has some sort of hearing thing. I've worked with people who had been deaf and had cochlear implants, and
Mhm,
all the office background noise was painful for them. So
mhm.
a private office, headphones, whatever it takes, a small accommodation, even if they're not disabled, was moving them, offering headphones, trying to find an ergonomic keyboard that also wasn't as loud. I mean, there were so many solutions, and so it kind of boggles
Exactly.
my mind that they didn't do that. But the layer above it, where it goes really into a different set of issues, is the name calling.
Yeah.
It's extraordinarily unprofessional. It's harmful to her professional standing with other coworkers, clients, customers, whoever he's communicating these things to. It's dismissive, disrespectful, and I don't know if anyone else picked up on it, but if maybe they never would say anything to Bob, but maybe they're like, now he's coming across like an asshole. And they're like, I don't want to work with that guy because if he's calling her names, what's he going to call me? And
Right.
he was doing that to other people, and she's the only one that was trying to stand up for herself.
Mhm.
I do think that that's a hostile work environment potential. You know,
Especially when she asked him so many times to stop. I mean, he sent it in multiple emails. Like, it would be different if he said it once or twice and then she asked him to stop and he stopped. Then it would be like, okay, he was trying to make a joke, but understood that she didn't like it. Even if the joke was funny or harmless, it still hurt her feelings. And
hmm
that's unacceptable about it. It's the fact that even after she asked him to stop, he repetitively kept doing it and included other people in that joke. That's the part that's unacceptable. You were told to stop, you were told she didn't like it, and you continue to do it, and you're disregarding her feelings. You may feel like she's disregarding your feelings by continuing to use the keyboard, but why don't we just come to consensus. This is where I feel like HR really could have stepped in. They both feel like the other person's in the wrong. HR needs to help them find a um meet in the middle, like find a path to the middle.
I mean, I think the place where it really, really went wrong, where there was bad behavior, was the name calling. And I think the rest of it was just a functional thing where a solution could have been met that accommodated both of their needs. And to me, it's just sounds so simple. And I don't know their office workplace and if what other spaces they might have had available or what other situations they could have provided. But it's clear that, based on the story, that they didn't really do much other than say, stop being silly, you
Right.
know? And I do think that they could have done more for the functional issue. But, when I think, nicknames are an interesting thing because sometimes they can be welcome. They can
Mhm.
be funny for, a moment.
Right.
And, there's always this line where harassment, and this is the HR hat, legally harassment isn't what the person doing the harassing thinks harassing is. Harassment is how it's landing on the person who's receiving it.
Mhm.
So you might have a workplace where there's jokes about sexual innuendos all the time, and everyone thinks it's funny. There's no problem because no one's feeling harassed. And then you might go to another situation, and that person who's having to listen to your little innuendos does feel harassed. And
Right.
that's when it becomes a problem. And do I advise against jokes with sexual innuendos in the office place? It really depends. I mean, I've had some pretty funny conversations with coworkers and it felt light. It didn't feel serious. But that being said, that was my comfort level.
Mhm.
And, but I've had people I work with, we actually did an interview and someone said something. I'm like, stop talking about pornography. We're on an interview. Like, what are you
Like, what's going on?
Right, and so it's sort of like, Pandora's box, you open it and it could go awry, and,
Right.
that person did not come work for us, by the way, and I don't know if that was a big red flag for them, but I definitely think that in an office environment where it was just allowed to go unchecked for what appears to be a period of time, um, that, you know, that could have led to any number of more actions because once you allow that kind of behavior, um, even as subtle as a nickname that was unwanted and rude, um, you know, what else could happen?
Right.
They're lucky it stayed there, to be honest.
Mhm.
But when you're, you know, wanting to be recognized for your accomplishments and achievements, and the boss is on the email, stuff like that. You don't want to be known as hammer hands.
No.
Nobody wants to give you an award that's two hammer hands. You want your recognition and you want your participation to be you. And unless
Right.
you give someone the nickname, I think it's, and I don't know how old Bob was, but it's crazy to me think a grown ass adult doing that.
Like, are we in high school? Like, that's bullying behavior. Like, here's the difference. They clearly aren't friends. He clearly isn't in the place to give her a nickname that's a backhand, you know? If they were friends and she was, like, accepting of it because they were friends, I guess that's different. It's still not cool, but she's accepting of it because they're friends. You're clearly not friends with this person. You're not on the level where you can call them that. Like, that's not no. Like, just no.
I think if I'm the HR person in that situation, besides separating them, I would punish for that behavior. Because
Mhm.
if you're doing it to her, you could be doing it to someone else, and
Exactly.
or will do it to someone else eventually. So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's not like a fireable offense in my opinion, but it is okay, performance improvement plan here. You're gonna learn how to respect your coworkers. We're gonna put you through
Mhm.
some training, and, you're going to issue an apology. Anyone who's you sent this email to, we want you to say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called this name. I wanna correct what I wrote." I would
Right.
have there be sort of like a whole set of actual consequences around it to sort of also show the rest of the company that this company actually protects the woman who's being mistreated.
Bullied.
Right.
Exactly. harassed. Like, it's that simple. Like, that is bullying, that is harassment, that's not gonna be accepted here.
Yeah. And to rise to the level of like an EEO claim for harassment, there are some standards, and I'm not 100% sure I would say this meets it, but it could eventually if it continued or if it affected you know, the perception value from management. Maybe she got overlooked for an opportunity because, he's kind of built this stigma around her. There's a
Right.
lot of different things to think about, but at the end of the day, it's just not good behavior. And again, she could be like, I don't want to work with people like this, and I don't want to work for a company that allows people to treat people this way, and
Mhm.
move on. And they've lost a good employee, you know.
Exactly.
So it's crazy to me that these things, I mean, it's the whole grown ass adult thing. And being in HR as long as I have, I've learned that it doesn't matter how old you are, people just will misbehave in the workplace for the dumbest reasons. And,
Mhm.
sometimes it feels like, like you've got a toddler and he plays with other kids, and you have to say, oh, well, why don't you share? And no, you can't hit somebody. And you're going to have to go sit in timeout. And it's like, you don't think you have to do that with 50-year-olds, but
No,
sometimes you do. It's
sometimes
crazy.
you do. You have to be like, you have to teach them that that's unacceptable, even though to you it's so apparent that that's unacceptable. Some people just aren't wired that way, which is crazy, but it's true, it happens.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go on to the next one?
Yes. Next one. Am I the asshole for telling my coworker she's the reason I resigned? I, female 27, recently resigned from my university job. People assumed I did because I want a more stable job working in the government. But honestly, the real reason was a toxic coworker who used to be my close friend. Ooh, that's tough. I actually helped her get her job. I shared materials, teaching tips, and record-keeping techniques so she could adjust. I even went out of my way by talking to each person that we work with to help her adjust. I really wanted her to succeed. A few months in, rumors started that she was another woman of a married colleague. People warned me about her, but I defended her and stood by her even when it made me look bad. I didn't know what they were doing to be labeled as having an affair. Things changed when she snapped at me after I suggested a better way to organize her records. After that, I stopped involving myself in her tasks. From then on, she avoided her assigned office and didn't complete single tasks I gave her, like shelf reading and reshelving. We work in a library, just so you know. This year, I assigned her the semestral inventory because I was busy with an upcoming evaluation and visit. She acknowledged it in a meeting, but the semester had ended and nothing was done. During summer, she used teacher's leave as an excuse not to do the semestral inventory assigned to her earlier. She said she could if she's allowed to work during teacher's leave. So she asked me to draft a letter asking her for work. Later, I found out it was so she could earn service credits.
Hmm.
I was called by our admin and told she's not allowed to work because she's on leave. I later explained that it was a task assigned to her earlier and I only wanted her to finish it. She was also paid extra for the upcoming evaluation and visit prep, but her outputs had errors.
Excuse me.
No, you're fine. When I asked her to correct them, she dismissed it and again cited her leave. Later, I learned she told her program head I was forcing her to work. It escalated to admin, and I felt like they believed her side more than mine. That was my breaking point. I couldn't continue to work with her. I looked for another job, applied, got accepted, and recently I resigned from my current job. Before leaving, I told her to her face that she was the reason I resigned. She looked upset, almost crying, but I honestly felt relieved finally saying it. Later, she insisted,
Excuse me. Can you hear me?
yep, I can hear you.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
You're fine. Later, she insisted she never said I forced her, just that she asked about her workload. But considering how far things escalated, I still don't fully believe that. So, am I the asshole for telling her directly she was the reason I left, or should I have just kept quiet and let people assume it was all about marriage instability?
What do you think?
I think this has many different layers because it has the coworker layer and friendship layer. On
Mhm.
the friendship layer, I think she has every right to be like, you're out of control. Like, what's going on? Like, I thought we were friends on a friendship level. On the coworker level, I mean, she resigned. There's nothing really the company can do if she says something about her leaving the office because of this girl's attitude. Um, so I definitely think this one's complicated because it does have so many layers. For you on the HR perspective, how do you feel about this?
Well, some of it sounds a little bit petty, but it
Yeah.
also sounds like there's a performance issue. The thing I didn't hear is whether or not this person was her direct report.
Mhm.
Because she was saying if I gave her tasks, she wasn't doing them. It wasn't clear that she was the boss, or what their dynamics were in their roles. Um, the affair rumors are interesting because either they're true or they're not.
Mhm.
If they're not true, it could be extremely damaging to her friend's reputation.
Right.
And it doesn't sound like she made a big deal of that particular issue.
No.
But maybe she thought that maybe it changed her perspective on why the woman was so comfortable behaving badly. Uh,
Right. I
sometimes
feel
it,
like it was almost thrown in there as like a slight to the ex-friend to be like, well, she might have been having an affair. So this whole thing does seem petty for sure. And another thing I wanted to throw in there was she kept on trying to help her friend, but her friend might have been in the place where she's like, I got it. I don't need help. Like, I can do this. Like, it was never clear to me in that post if it was the friend saying, like, all right, like, I got this. Like, thank you so much for your help, but like, I can do this on my own. I want to try doing it on my own. It was never clear what the reasoning was why the friend kind of pushed back on the help. And I think that was odd too, that that wasn't explained.
well, yeah, and I think telling someone that they're the reason that you left, um, it's clearly she was concerned about how her reputation was affected by leaving. That people thought she had some marital issues or something herself,
Right.
um, and maybe she was driven by some sort of embarrassment or feeling a need to regain some power over the conversation. I
Mhm.
think on the other side of that, and that she didn't seem to have any real evidence that her friend was having an affair. But
Right.
either with the either she is or she isn't. If she is, that behavior is actually part of what a hostile work environment is, and that the woman writing that may actually be a victim of a hostile work environment that's developed by having an affair. For
Right.
example, we all know, well, I don't know if you know, you might know, probably the Coldplay concert moment where the woman was caught.
Oh, yeah. And they got caught red-handed.
Yes. Well, and she came out recently with this whole story of how she had left her marriage already. They were officially separated, and she told the guy, and he said, well, I am too. And that was their moment where they got together. Her story, she was on Oprah recently, and her story sounds a little sus to me. There's moments where I'm like,
Are you just saving face right now? Like,
well, I don't think that they just suddenly got personal in that moment.
it did not seem like that at all. It seemed like they were very comfortable with each other.
Because from the moment she actually separated to the moment they got caught was 6 weeks. And she said within 6 weeks, before that concert, they had had a conversation about reporting their relationship. That was
I'm
all
not
supposed to be
using it.
above board to management. And it sounds weird because I can't think of a single guy, well, not any guy. I can't, not all guys. It would be very rare for two divorcing people within 6 weeks of her moving out to be like, let's announce our relationship, that you're that far into your relationship. And she said,
Right,
like, oh, because it was a very comfortable place, because we've been working together for years very closely, that it kind of happened fast. But I still find it kind of like, and maybe they're like, maybe we need to get ahead of it because we are starting to spend time together. Um, but I think she reported to him. But, one of the reasons why affairs are taboo in the workplace are because if I'm so and so reporting to so and they have all the power for the company, I'm protected. I
mhm,
might get raises, promotions. I could just kick off and not do much but go flirt with the boss, and nobody would be able to do anything about it. And
right,
that's why those affairs, inter office relationships are taboo. some huge percentage of relationships start in the workplace. So I
Mhm.
think there needs to be room for that. But I think that having that defined line of, are you currying special favors because of this? You know,
Right.
she was more recently promoted into that role. She could be the greatest HR person in the world. She could have deserved it. But if an affair is known, it would look bad to anyone around her that might be
Right.
like,
And it
maybe.
discredits her work because it's like people are automatically going to assume she only got it because she was having an affair with her boss.
Right, and if they were like 2 assembly line workers at a manufacturing plant, and none of them have any power, I don't think it's a big deal, you
Right.
know? But when it's the CEO and the chief people officer and, they have to work that hand in hand. She talked about how closely they had to work all the time, and I found that a little funny because I've been in HR forever, and we don't actually work that closely with the CEO. I mean, we do work with them, but it's not like this mega
No,
relationship, you
you're
know?
you're not in their office all day, every day. Like that's just not how it
Right.
goes.
So it definitely was interesting. And having, and I'm not saying I disbelieve her entirely. They might have both been separated or in some form or another with their marriages in a bad place.
Mhm.
And she definitely had moved out before the Coldplay concert. So the day, if it was that she moved out because she had feelings for this guy and they both discussed, leaving their spouses, I mean, great. But, you know, interestingly, she said her husband was at the concert. So, but
Mhm.
so I don't think that it was like she was fully hiding out from having, you know, I think they felt anonymous in such a large crowd and just it was like the worst case scenario for them. But,
Yes.
um, having an affair whenever there's somebody in a position of power, because I think you said that she said that people were accusing her of having an affair with the boss.
Mhm.
So I have black paint under my nail in case anyone can see that, but could not get it out for the life of me. But so with the boss, that's different. She could be ignoring what she's supposed to be doing, and she could be acting bad because of it. You know,
Right. You just
what?
never know.
Yeah,
Yeah, in that case, you just never know, like, especially if it's not confirmed or denied, there's
right.
no point.
Well, and I kind of wonder if she went to her friend and said, "Hey, there's this rumor floating around, and I'm a little concerned for your reputation with the company. Are you okay?" You
Right.
know, like a true friend might,
Right, because she said in the post, like, "I had her back and didn't believe it," but it's like, "But did you say anything about not believing it? Did you talk to your friend about it?" It just seems very petty to me, for sure. This whole thing just seems very petty, very high school.
But as far as telling her friend that she's the reason that she left, I mean, maybe the friendship was burned anyways. Maybe she just wanted to
Right.
fire one last shot at her friend. That to me, like from the HR standpoint, is just between them. It's not a big deal.
Exactly.
But if there was some of this mistreatment was really based on her leveraging her position with the boss as an excuse to mistreat other people, then the girl might have like some sort of opportunity to file a complaint. Whether
Right.
it go anywhere, if I were HR, I would definitely investigate whether or not there's an affair, just to sort of at least get in front of it and say, okay, if you guys are going to have a relationship, we need this documented. We need to put some rails in place.
Right.
You can report to somebody else in the company and create like a little bit of separation. You can't say no, don't fall in love if that's what's happening. If he's married, and it's a public company and it's got a high power position, that's a whole other issue, like we saw with that company with the coal
Right.
fire. So anyhow, any last thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this one's just very complicated. I don't think we got a full story, so it's hard to fully judge the situation. I don't think she's an asshole for telling her friend, like, "Listen, the actions you have done have made me quit." I don't think that makes her an asshole in the end.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
just is.
other things in the story could make her an asshole if we got the full explanation.
I know.
Because we didn't get that, I would say no. In this situation, you telling someone straight up, "Hey, you're the reason why I quit. Maybe you should fix your behavior." I don't think that makes you an asshole.
No, makes you
Alright,
honest if it's
ri
true.
right?
Hmm.
I'll move on to the next one. Am I the asshole for reporting my coworker for outing me to another person? No. Oh my God. So I, 23 male, work for a high school as an educational assistant, assisting with a special needs student. For the sake of this story, I will be referring to my student with gender neutral pronouns to protect their identity. More important information for this story, I identify as a transgender man. I have been out since I was 15 and didn't start my medical transition until I was 18. I don't tell people this because of where I live, and frankly, I don't believe it's important to know this fact about me. My primary focus is my student and making sure they get all the education they need so they can succeed. My student has an outside provider who I will refer to as T. She came by in her usual time to observe them throughout the day. When I was informed by her that during one of my absences, one of the permanent subs for the building, we will refer to him as S, told her that I was trans and continued to say very ignorant things and misgender me. I don't get easily bothered when it comes to misgendering anymore. When she told me this, I was furious. I have never told him this information, and I knew it wasn't up to him to go around telling people this. So I immediately went to the principal and one of the assistant principals about the situation. This was just a few days ago, and I was told they're actively investigating the situation with the possibility of the sub being fired. And just today, I messaged one of the ladies in the office asking to block him from picking up my absences to keep him away from my student. Now, when I pass him in the hallway, he just stares at me. Am I the asshole? I should also clarify S is extremely lazy and already has a pending investigation on him for abandoning his assignments for hours on end, including my student. 12 9 December 19th will be S's last day. I don't know if he is fired or if he quit. Goodness. You're
Wow.
definitely not the asshole for reporting this person in that situation. That is exactly what you should have done. I mean, that's nobody's business and that's no one's story to tell but your own. I think it makes perfect sense why this person wouldn't want to share that they're transgender. It doesn't matter. Just like it doesn't matter if you're gay or if you're straight, that's who you are. And I think talking about it in a derogatory tone and a demeaning way is completely unacceptable, especially in front of students. Like that is beyond unacceptable.
Yeah. In front of the students and to colleagues.
Right.
It's such it's very disappointing that people feel a need to behave that way. But there's also laws that protect that too. And the school having any question about that to me is a problem.
Mhm.
Because especially in, kind of the culture, it could really put you at risk. You could become a victim of somebody else, or this person who told them that it was happening was looking out for them, but if
Right.
that person didn't care about their well-being, it could get worse. And
Right.
you know and maybe it was like the worst kept secret. Maybe everyone kind of knew. you know
Mhm.
um, there are people who are transgender that you would never know, and there's people who you kind of know.
Mhm.
But I don't. But it does in the workplace. It doesn't matter if you know, think you know. There are people who are like legit a female or legit a male as in birth and presenting that way now, who are misgendered, who are like people. There's like famous people who are like, oh, I swear she has an Adam's apple. She must be a man, and things like
Mhm.
that. So it's such a sensitive topic, and you
Right.
don't know that person's, from birth, you know, uh, raised from birth, born this way, or is this other way. You don't know that. So bringing that into a conversation in the workplace is really not only professional, against the law and unprofessional, it actually could create a risk, just
Exactly.
unfortunately, because of the way the culture is, and
Right.
could harm their career if somebody they report to is, um, you know, discriminatory.
Exactly. And like bottom line, them being transgender doesn't affect how well they do their job by any fucking means. Doesn't matter if you're again gay, straight, anything. Like it does not matter. That clearly this person cares very much so about their student and making sure that the student has their assignments on time, the student's being well taken care of. This They don't want the student to be around someone that negatively talks about someone that actively cares for them. Like, this person obviously is doing their job very well, and the fact that this person, the sub, can only seem to bring up his transphobic comments is harassment, is bullying, and should not be accepted, simply.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a Power 3 has online trainings for, sexual harassment and non-discrimination.
Mhm.
And, you know, the there's a lot of nuances to how people interact and what people might talk about in a workplace. And you can't perfectly control everything and
Right.
every conversation and every need and, all these things. Um, but, the sort of the number one bottom line thing is don't talk about it.
Mhm.
If someone wants to bring it up for themselves, if you're pregnant, don't talk about them being pregnant if they haven't brought it up to you and told you they're pregnant.
Right, it's none of your damn business, and it doesn't affect you, like.
If your sexuality is something different, you're transgender, anything like that, it could be plain as day to you that there's some, transgender. Don't bring it up.
Mhm.
If they want to bring it up, if they want to talk to people about it, that's up to them,
Right.
and then don't repeat it.
Mhm.
And to me, that's a simple thing in the workplace is if they tell me something, unless they say, you know what, you can tell so and so, or you can tell
Right.
anyone you want, you know,
That's
I,
a private, personal conversation to not be shared, and that's up to them if they wanna share it or not, it's not up to you.
yeah, we had, an, at one of the places I worked at, a sort of a number of gay men,
Mhm.
and they're awesome. They're some of my favorite people.
Mm.
Um, but it was never said, "Oh, I'm gay." It wasn't said. It just kind of sort of was understood.
Right.
And uh, it was funny because you know uh, it was no issue for anyone in our company. It was really nice. And if somebody had an issue, they never said anything. And everyone got along great. So I think sometimes people might, when they're face to face with someone, actually be more accepting. But like I've been to their house and there's gay male half undressed firemen calendars on the wall and stuff. I mean, it wasn't a secret, right? And I mean, I think women can appreciate firefighters with the shirts off too, but it's funny because it just wasn't something that we talked about. I never brought it up. They never brought it up directly, you
Right,
know.
'cause at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, like, who fucking
Right,
cares? Like, if you're
right.
gay, cool, if you're straight, cool, if you're bi, cool, like, nobody like, that doesn't affect anything, especially who you are as a person, like, if I like you, I like you, it doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters.
Well, and the workplace is an interesting thing too because you're still a human being and a person, and you still have your beliefs and whatever. Um, but you're there to do a job. You're hired to do a job, and at the end of the day, um, unless there's a contract in place, and not all contracts are enforceable, but employment in general is at will.
Mhm.
And if you don't like it, you can go.
Right,
If you're uncomfortable, you can go.
right,
To
and
harass.
that's on you.
Mhm. It definitely. I think that where companies go wrong is they assume that they kind of wait till there's a problem. They don't do enough training in upfront, and and it's not just carelessness. I mean, I think sometimes it's a lack of imagination of what can go wrong. I've dealt with so many um, issues in my HR career that I'm like, I wouldn't have seen that one coming. But a
Mhm.
lot of them you can see coming. And I think, discrimination of any kind, you can kind of see coming. It's going to happen. Uh,
Yes.
but if you, and, preventative measures, from the company standpoint, and, I talk about how we protect the company, we protect the employees. But if we're just thinking greedy from the company's perspective, it is meaningful to do the trainings, to do the communications, to be
Mhm.
able to demonstrate that not only did we take the time to train them on how to treat each other and what not to do and what harassment and discrimination looks like. But we had them sign something saying they took the training and they understand bum, 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 bum. And
Right.
then when you behave that way, you say, we gave you this training. You understood you weren't supposed to do this. And it gives you that much more leverage to make tough decisions. But it also protects you in court if somebody winds up saying, you know what, I work for you, the school, and I'm transgender and this person outed me and you didn't do anything about it. Now the guy's leaving, and my theory is he was not fired, because
Yeah.
if the guy was leaving in the future, at best, they discussed a mutual agreement.
Yeah, like, all right, we're cutting ties, we're good. Nothing.
Firing, you're gone. You're
Right.
escorted out. So I don't think they fired him. I think they took the easy route and maybe admonished him for things. And he was like, "Yeah, I guess I'll resign or something."
Yeah.
Uh, but you don't keep someone for an extended period of time that you're firing, because
No,
it's actually kind of not safe, really, especially in a school environment. So I don't think that he was just fired, but and maybe they pressured him, but I think, and that's the other thing. A lot of companies are afraid to make tough decisions. I mean, I've had
mhm.
people physically attack somebody in an office, and they're like, "Well, can we do it as a layoff?" And I'm like, "No, no, because when he goes and brings a gun to the next employer's place and shoots somebody, and you just laid him off, but everyone in the office knew that he was committing violence in the workplace, and they did an employment background check, and they called you and said, 'Well, why was he let go?' 'Oh, it was a layoff. We were downsizing.'"
That's lying. Like,
You're right. And you don't have to tell him that he committed violence in the workplace, but you can
right.
say he was terminated for cause,
Mhm.
period. And that'll tell another company, like, there's a problem, you know?
Exactly.
And, and that's an extreme example, but that's why sometimes you got to make tough decisions. Um,
Exactly.
and it doesn't just protect, I mean, I'm talking about the greedy company not wanting to get sued, but when you protect from that angle, you're also kind of making the right decisions for the employees to protect them. And
Mhm.
that person who wrote that deserved that protection. Um,
Yes, for sure. They're not the
especially,
asshole in any world, in my opinion. Like, they stuck up for themselves against something that was clearly wrong. Good for
yeah,
them for saying something.
yeah. I really want an Am I the Asshole where they're legit the asshole. We're going to have to find
Um,
out.
I know.
The asshole.
This one might be. The next one is, am I the asshole for reporting a crying baby to HR? I'm
Oh,
gonna
okay. Let's do this. Let's
I'm
do
gonna
this.
read before I judge, but as a mom of 2 young kids, yes, you are.
That was the title.
I am second guessing my decision to report to HR. There is a person in my building who brings their infant to work with her, and it cries and screams and fusses as babies do. She does not close her office door, but leaves it open like an echo chamber resounding through the halls. It is incredibly difficult to focus on anything at all with a crying baby in your ear. Closing my door helps a bit, but we have a culture of leaving doors open to signal that you're available for an impromptu meeting. I leave mine open about half the time. I decided today that something's got to give. I do not know her, and we do not work for the same department. I work in an office with a lot of touchy personalities and egos, and I was not confident that I could simply ask her to close her door without setting off World War III, either with her individually or between our co located departments. Instead, I sent a very nicely worded email to HR asking if someone can send her an anonymous request to please kindly keep her door closed while she has her baby with her. I assumed the woman had some kind of reasonable accommodation for having the baby at work, but now I'm second guessing myself. What if she doesn't? And isn't she supposed to have the baby in is she supposed to have the baby with her? Did I just tell on her? I am feeling quite sheepish about it at the moment. Should I have tried to resolve this myself? Yes. HR has already responded with an empathetic, good job in bringing this to AR as this is an HR issue and not something to handle yourself. But I still feel like maybe I am the asshole here. In my opinion, why did you bring it to HR when you didn't try to solve it yourself first? This woman might not have even known that you can hear the baby crying from your office. This woman probably what like there are so many options to fix this situation. Tell her straight up, "Hey, like also, maybe go freaking help her if her baby's crying all the time. I don't know. That's just my fucking opinion. Like, if I hear a baby crying and I see a mom struggling, I'm gonna ask if I can help. Like, it's not rocket science. But I don't think this issue needed to be brought to HR immediately. If you had gone to the mom and been like, "Hey, listen, like I can hear your baby crying through the walls. I know there's nothing you can do about it, but do you think you would just close your door? You could leave a sign on it that says like just knock, I'm available for meetings." If she had responded to that and been like, "Oh," like freaked out on him, that's when you can bring it to HR because yes, having a crying baby can be a distraction in the office. But you immediately going to HR and you said straight up you don't know this person. Why wouldn't you try to get to know them and solve the issue first? Like that's being an adult. Like I just don't understand. There were so many different ways to go about this other than to immediately involve the big guns. Like this person might not even know that there's an issue. You know what I mean?
Right. It is, that's a tough one. It's funny that HR said that they were glad that this person went to them.
Mhm.
I human experience, like I think having that conversation with the person would have been the right thing to do. And I say right from the human experience side. HR clearly had a different opinion, maybe because they were worried that person would go marching in and be a Bob, fucking,
Right.
you know. But I think that uh, you know, there's there's nuances to this because we don't know if this person was allowed to have their baby there. It
Right.
was a badly kept secret if she was not. Um,
Right, and we don't know the reasons as to why she has the baby in the office with her. I'm sure no mom wants that. Like maybe she couldn't afford daycare. Maybe the child has needs where they need to be with mom all the time. Like you don't know. We don't know any of the situation, so it's kind of hard to judge based on that fact. Like we don't know kind of the background information.
Yeah, and the basic mom empathy is I can't imagine being in her shoes. I've had to
Exactly.
get myself all dressed nice and into the office place, presumably a very young baby, carrying them in, wish I was still on maternity leave and having to sit there and also not only try to focus and accomplish my work, but also comfort my baby.
Mhm.
I do know that from the HR hat side, there's lactation laws now that didn't used to exist. The companies are required to provide a place for breastfeeding or for pumping.
Mhm.
And if you are breastfeeding and, that either I'd have to look deeper into the laws as to would it be normal to bring your baby in while you're breastfeeding up to a certain age?
Mhm.
So this might have been a very young baby where I think there are some protections to be able to breastfeed your baby in the workplace.
Mhm.
And I have questions about the company. So like, obviously we work from home because our stuff is computer based. When we want to get together, we get together and work as a team in person. I don't know if the company had thought about like, hey, maybe we should find a way to let her work from home while her baby is so young or maybe has
Right.
special or whatever's going on that's causing her to bring the baby in. Maybe it's that, as you know, young babies are harder to place into daycare. And it's
Mhm.
very hard to know what daycare to trust, and you have to take time to figure that out. Maybe that was an interim offering from the company. If it were me and I ran the company and her job could be primarily done from home with the baby, that's what I would do first. Um,
Right.
as far as solving it, as far as this person in particular brought it to HR. Who knows who else it was affecting? And maybe those other people were able to tune it out. If it's not my own baby, I'm pretty good at tuning things out. Or maybe they put on headphones, or shut their office doors too. And, I do think from the perspective, I understand the perspective, just like I said with Bob, that if you are sensitive to the noise, if it's affecting your ability to do your job, is it a reasonable accommodation to have this person, be doing this thing that's affecting everyone around them?
Mhm.
All of that being said, you know, a direct conversation would have been the right human thing to do. The right, let me just go check in. Are you doing okay? We can hear your baby. If there's anything that I can do to help, that would be great. I'm shutting my door sometimes. If you can shut your door when the baby's particularly upset, that would be helpful for me.
Right.
And show some empathy and care while also sort of saying, hey, this would help me if you could shut your door when this happens. For
Right.
a week, this woman feels pressure to keep her door open.
Mhm.
If their culture is keep your door open so you show that you're accessible, she may feel some pressure to be like, I'm having to prove that I'm here and that I'm working and that I'm available. And so
Mhm.
she may not know quite what else to do. I can almost guarantee you she doesn't want to be in the position she's in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you think the baby crying is stressing you out, imagine how their mother feels. Like, no one is more stressed when their baby is crying than a mom is. Like, the
And
basic solution to this is just compassion and empathy and being an adult and putting your big boy shoes on and trying to solve the issue yourself. I don't think that this needed to escalate to HR immediately.
yeah, I sure do wish I knew what the outcome of that was and how
I
HR handled.
know.
I do, because I think that that would be very interesting to me. So in this, I mean, we kind of based on the title, we said you're an asshole. I don't think you're an asshole. I think that you were maybe in a position where you didn't quite know what to do.
Mhm.
Um, we think that as people who've been in that position, I'd rather have that someone come to me instead of me having to then deal with potentially being in trouble with HR and all.
Exactly.
So that would be person to person my preferred thing. Now, if it was an irate, angry person who was going to march in and be a total jerk, I think going to HR would have been the
But
right.
better.
Um,
Exactly.
and the fact that this person is feeling badly about it tells me that there is some empathy there, that maybe
Yeah.
they're second guessing that they did something that could cause this person harm. So I don't think I'm not. I'm going to still say I don't think they're the asshole. What do you think?
I agree with you in that sense. I think that they're not the asshole. I think they were just a person in a really hard situation that they hadn't been in before necessarily and didn't know what to do. I agree with you. The fact that they're overthinking what they've done shows that they do care about the outcome of this person and their baby. And I think if they were like, fuck this baby and fuck this mom and yada yada, yada, that would make it totally different. But the fact that they actually care about the outcome, I think just shows they were trying to get their work done and the baby crying was affecting them. Could they have gone about it in a better way? Yes. But again, we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all learn from those mistakes. And I just hope the outcome was okay.
Assuming she was being totally above board about it, which I can't imagine that you would think that you could get away with sneaking your baby in and then the whole office can hear them crying. But
Exactly.
I'm imagining that then hopefully HR was really compassionate about their situation and came
Yeah.
up with a solution that was supportive for the mother and supportive of the employees. And I think, that's the gray area that, it's a very nuanced and judgment based thing. And
Hmm.
HR has the requirement to protect this woman's rights, you know, and provide for her in a certain way in her situation, and to also create an environment that works for the other employees to be able to focus and do their work. It's a balance.
Hmm.
And hopefully they were not just coming in like, hey, you can't have your baby crying. I think that would be, that would be the one thing is if HR handled it well versus badly. Like you wouldn't want her to lose her job over that.
Exactly.
But this all goes back to me saying I think we really need to start looking at how we look at women in the workforce who are having children and young children, even teenage children. I mean, there's a lot of things that you're doing as a parent with, medical appointments. If they're sick, if you're sick, you're tired, especially when they're young and they're not sleeping through the night.
Like, schools aren't open from 9 to 5. That's not a school schedule.
Mhm.
Parents have to wake up earlier to get their kids to school on time. They have to find rides, make sure that their kids are safe if they're riding the bus home to get home before they get home. They have to make lunches, breakfast, everything for their kids. And again, that often does fall on the primary parent, which is typically the mom, not in all cases, but in a lot of them.
It's a big burden.
And it's just not workplace culture isn't framed around families. It's just not. I mean, you can't work a 9 to 5 and make it to every single one of your kids' practices and games. You can't
Right.
work 9 to 5 and bring your kids to all their appointments and make sure they get to school on time and get home safe. Like, that's just not doable. You need help. And I don't think we should have that culture where you need help to be making sure your kids are safe and happy and healthy. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, I think that, you know, um, if I could, and that's one of the reasons I started Power 3 is I like the idea of bending the norms to create a
Right.
space that women can be successful because, man, women run circles around many men, even half the amount of time they will run circles. And I'm not saying not to diminish a man's contribution, but especially when women are given that opportunity to have a foot in their career, but have the flexibility to balance motherhood,
Mhm.
will be your rock star.
Yeah.
And there's a way to look at these things a little differently. And, and it's funny because like salaried employment is based on what you can accomplish in a week. And it's not supposed to be based on your time, but every company still manages it by time. But if
Yeah.
they look, I really don't care how many hours you work. If you accomplish what you're here to do, then we're good. You know,
Right.
then we might have a very different outcome. And depending on the person, they might finish a lot faster. I mean, I haven't had a single full-time job where I needed all 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to do my job.
Right.
I did a lot of extra stuff because I was sitting there bored.
Right, you're
Um,
like, "Might as well do something," but it's not, like, imperative to your job what that I
right.
you're
And even
doing.
if I wasn't full time, I'm still the kind of person who will think beyond the task at hand to try to improve things, and
Right.
that's part of that building that trust in relationships. Like if this woman was working in an office on a computer in this day and age, she probably could have worked from home. And
Right.
why I would ask why the company is creating a scenario where she has to bring her baby in versus
Mhm.
saying, we're going to give you 3 months more working from home,
Exactly.
whatever it takes to kind of help support you. So there's
Mhm.
I mean, if she was sort of like a hands-on, she's making bread at a bakery, that's a very different story. It's hard to
Right.
accommodate, but
Right.
I don't know. I feel like, the, the, um, the standards are changing and we still have a ways to go
Mhm.
to get where we need to be to truly support women. And
Completely agree.
And even if we have all the laws in place, we need people who are willing to support through those changes.
Mhm.
And, I know it's a disruption when someone has to go out on leave and you still need that job to be done. But, that's part of business and that's part of finding your way forward. It could be that your top star employee, male or female, has cancer. And it's the same problem. They may go out for treatments and things like that, and you have to accommodate them.
Mhm.
But I think there's just more sympathy for that,
Exactly.
and women need more sympathy in the workplace. And I don't think that that person was being totally unsympathetic. I just think that, developing, relationships with your coworkers, that was an opportunity to do that and to show support. And I think that they missed that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Completely agree with you on that one.
I think we're good for today. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't even know if we have any more saved, but we can talk about those another time.
Yeah, there was one more left, but
We'll save it.
it's kinda long and it's very similar to the other ones. Mhm.
Okay. So, at the end of the day, the reason we do this podcast is to provide information. Hopefully, there are people who can relate to these stories, who can use support, who need empowerment to go to their employers and protect themselves.
Mhm.
Um, and not everything is black and white. I think all of these situations have nuances.
Yeah.
But expecting your employers to do trainings preventatively before somebody's being, a jerk or discriminatory in some way or harassing, and then expecting that company to take action when there is harassment, bullying, and mistreatment in the workplace. That's kind of what we're here to promote, and we will be back with more.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I'm going to end the recording now.